All right, so tip number 3 for the 5 golden pillars of music production is using your whole frequency spectrum as a beat maker. Okay, even when you're mixing music, you can think about this too, especially when you're mixing your music. You could be applying certain effects on, or you could be EQing in a certain way. So, using the whole frequency spectrum is definitely a golden pillar. It allows your music to be full. So, you must understand how basic sounds work. And I'm going to show you that. It'll be really eye-opening to you, okay? When selecting instruments, always think about, getting them to fit in. So for example, you got to be creative. So when you're a beat maker and you're playing your instruments, you can play up and down in octaves. For example, a bass line can actually be a lead up high. That's a really cool pro tip I want to pass on to you, okay? So I'm talking about using your full frequency spectrum. And again, we're just going to load up the Pro Q3 and we're just going to use it as a visual analyzer, which means that we can see our lows and our highs. And so let's just look at a kick drum here, okay? And so I'm talking to you about that you must understand how basic sounds work, okay? So when we talk about a kick drum, what do you think about a kick drum? You think that it's mainly in the low end, right? And I just want to select maybe just a little bit of a different kick drum. Maybe something like this, okay? So in our track, if we had a drum loop going on with instruments, many times we're not hearing this high end. But you can see that high end actually does exist with this kick drum. And so watch this. If we take a high cut filter, and we cut it off, I'm going to turn off the auto gain because if I don't, otherwise it's just going to make it louder and louder, right? And I'm just going to do this. Okay, so in our song, we would typically hear the kick drum like this. Let's turn up just a little bit. Right? So without it, but with it cut. Okay, now I'm just going to copy this over and we're going to use a low cut. We're going to bring it up like this. So this is like the high end of the kick drum. This is helping that kick drum to actually stand out in the song, right? Like all these frequencies are what help the drum cut through. But really in our track, we're really hearing this. All right? So what I'm trying to say is when we are looking at a kick drum, it's really important to understand how our basic sounds work, because even though that we see this full frequency spectrum in this sound, like it looks pretty full, right? Really, we are only hearing this in our song. Okay, so it's a little bit deceiving, okay? But I'm mainly talking about when we have a full song going on, such as our kick, our clap, and let's just kind of make a little drum loop here. So I'm just going to lower it down just a little bit, make one on the spot. Okay, and we'll just layer these up. And this clap here, since it's a little bit looser sounding, sometimes I will kind of use the out, and I can trim it up just a little bit. Okay, we'll turn it up. Okay, so we got this kick drum. I'm going to go cut itself so that these drums right here sound cleaner. Okay, so again, let's just look at the claps here quickly, because again, we're going to see the claps, they have low end frequencies, but really the clap is everywhere from around here and over. All right, so let's just go to a high shelf, right? So really for a clap, it's kind of like all in here, which is where like the clap is really cutting through. The clap does have the low end, especially if we have a snare. Let's get like a real snare. Maybe something like that. Again, I'm just going to trim this up a little bit because a lot of these sounds have really powerful layers. They cut through in a mix good, but I just want to show you see, so a snare, again, you got to learn how these sounds work. A snare, this is what cuts through, and this is a really cool mixing trick. So if we listen to, and I'm going to turn off that auto gain, but I just want to exaggerate this, so let's turn it off. Okay, so sorry, that's too much. But watch off to on. All All right, so it sounds a little bit muffled, so you can tighten it up a little bit, or you can even just cut a little bit right after, and it can kind of be like before and after. Right, so this is more of a snare that like we know and that we listen to in like a lot of rap or hip hop, right? They kind of boost that kind of fundamental in the snare. Okay, so again, I'm just kind of talking about your frequency spectrum, knowing how to use your sounds. Now, I'm just going to build a little drum loop. I'll put some melodies in, and then I just want to talk a little bit about thinking about where you should be placing your instruments within the frequency spectrum, because if you follow the standards, because like there's typically like those musical charts where instruments should be fitting in your mix, but the thing is that is for like, let's say, classical music, where they do want things to be like very perfect and stand out and fit. But as a beat maker, you know, like when we are selecting our instruments, like we are selecting super random sounds, right? And we don't follow that stuff. So for example, if we use a piano, let's say this one's going to probably sound like country or like kind of like in a saloon. So, you know, sometimes it might be like you get this sound, but let's route it to like the mixer. Okay, watch, we're going to route it to the mixer. Instead of putting the heavy effects directly on, again, I usually kind of send it to a send. Now let's just go Westworld, and I'll go like distortion. Okay, so let's just confirm what we've done. So I have this flex instance open. Okay, it's going to insert 9. I've also routed it to another send. So right now, all it did was it duplicated its audio. It made it louder. Okay, so what we can do is we turn it down a little bit. Let's just load up a distortion. I really like the Fruity Blood Overdrive. Really, really powerful. And I've shared this before, but you can actually right click on a lot of these plugins for FL Studio. You can change the theme. And again, if you right click, these windows stay open, right? So watch, if I left click, it goes away. But if you right click, you can kind of decide what you like. And there you go. So we'll use the red one. Okay, so let's just really, really, really distort this. Okay, we'll go to 100. Okay, I'm gonna turn this down. But again, depending on the sound that you're wanting as a beat maker, you know, something like that may not be uncommon. And again, that might be a bit aggressive. So watch, we can open up an EQ. Turn off the auto gain again. Watch, maybe we cut some of the highs. So let me go more into a different beat. I'll load up an example. We'll talk a little bit more about where these instruments are fitting, and then also how to be creative.